Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. My name is mccarko, and today I'm here to talk to you about the little, or should I say, abyssal problems with curse lock. Before I jump into it, I'd like to give you guys a little bit of a background. Uh, I've been a long-time Hearthstone player. I've been playing since Blackrock Mountain days, and I'm an ex-collegiate player. I played collegiate Hearthstone all throughout my university career, and I've hit Legend a handful of times. Before you, Now that I've gone that out of the way, let's just jump right into it. So Questlock. Questlock was one of the decks I was looking most forward to in this upcoming set. Um, Coming out of basically half a year of Quest Warlock, I was really looking forward to something new. I was also looking really forward to the Murloc Warlock, but that's another story. So Curse Lock. Curse Lock was a bit more of a traditional control strategy. Um, as fun as Quest Lock was, it was its own kind of abomination where you're essentially milling yourself to kill your opponent. Uh, Curse Lock kind of is more akin to that of Bomb Warrior, a normal control deck that slowly kills your opponent with chip damage, whereas old control decks was more fatigue. Um, but unlike Warrior, Curse Lock was plagued with a lot more issues, and I'm going to start covering some of these issues. I'll take the most obvious one first. All the Curse cards are pretty horribly understated. Um, we have Syracuse Cultist, basically rocking a 2 mana body with no instant effect. You have Drag Below, which is a 4 mana Shadow Bolt. Shadow Bolt costs 3. And you have Abyssal Wave, which one could argue is maybe the closest statted. I would still probably bump this down to 5 mana. I know Flame Strike back in the day was 7 mana deal 4, but nowadays Flame Strike 7 mana deal 5, and Warriors have 0 mana deal 5 to everything. So I think a 5 mana Flame Strike isn't that overpowered. Um, so right off the bat, the core set of cards are overstated or understated realistically. Second main problem is currently in the meta, the deck has weird anti-synergy or synergy with your opponent's deck for multiple decks. Particularly Quest Hunter has the interaction where your curses actually help complete their quest, and should Quest Warlock ever come back, you're also assisting in your opponent completing the quest. So depending on the matchup, this deck actually helps your opponent win sometimes. And lastly, and this is a bit more of a nuanced issue, but I don't see this being brought up much. Um, this type of gameplay strategy is best suited for, I guess, control decks. They're the decks that let you go long, or when you're facing control decks, they're the decks that let the games go long and let your curses actually get value. And one of the things that really is common with control decks is that they have a lot of cards in hand, especially if you're going into the control v control matchup. Both players are going to have hands filled with removal that's basically unusable. So it's not common for players to have really full hands. And this deck, one of its main struggles is dealing with trying to get curses into your opponent's hand when they don't have the room. It's actually a really big problem, and there's a lot of situations where you want to have that big pop-up turn where you fill your opponent's hand with curses and kill them, but ultimately you're only able to say put 2 or 3 curses into their opponent's deck. Add on top of the fact with the current interaction where these curses expire before their opponent draws their card, you're only even able to do the mill strategy when you initially put the curse into your opponent's hand. And that's also given the fact that they don't already have a curse in their hand that's about to expire. Um, Now that I have the main issues with Curse Lock out of the way, how would I go about fixing this deck? Because honestly, I think there is something quite fun in here. It's a unique control strategy that's, um, I guess you could argue, is kind of like OTKing, but I do like control decks that have the general chip damage kind of feel to it. So, I mean, the most obvious fix, which honestly I don't even think would fix the deck. Most people would suggest buff the curse cards. Um, Make Syracuse Cultist either a 3, 4, which honestly I don't think would do much. I think the better change would actually to make it a 2 mana card. Similarly, and I think this is honestly a legitimate request. Drag Below should just be 3 mana. It's okay for us to have a better version of Shadow Bolt in the game for a year or two. It's not that big of a deal. It's not going to break standard. Likewise, Abyssal Wave, you could probably also get away with moving that down to 5. But is that going to fix the core issues of the deck? Not really. You may have noticed up until this point, there's one curse card I have left out so far, Zakul. Um, Now, of the curse cards, I actually think Zakul is fine as it is. I know there's a lot of people that would argue that the healing effect should be permanent. Um, I would actually probably argue against that. Depending on the setup, Zakul can essentially be a Reno Jackson and get you a full heal. Um, it's extremely powerful, and while you could make it a permanent effect, and I'm sure that would do probably a pretty good improvement to the deck overall, I'm fine with it being a one-turn health swing, or one-time health swing. Um, I did kind of wish Zakul was a bit more of a cooler card, giving some context. I'm a longtime WoW player as well, and Zakul was one of my favorite raid fights of all time, and uh, hoping for something a little bit flashier than what we ended up getting, but uh, it's always okay, Zakul. We can't all be winners. Um, so right away, you can always go about buffing the cards. That's an option, but honestly, I think a bigger improvement, and this is one I don't see being suggested as much. I think the number one change you can do to this deck to kind of fix some of the issues is to simply make the curses expire after your opponent draws a card. And I think this combats two things. And well, I mean, the main thing it combats is your opponent keeping their hand too full. Currently, I think very it's weird that of all the kind of degenerate decks on ladder right now, this deck is the weakest and also provides the most counterplay to your opponent. I find that a bit counterintuitive. I mean, I think it's good design, the amount of counterplay the strategy has, but it's ultimately one of the things that's killing off the card. I think a number one change I would like to see, have the curses expire after the draw happens. I think you should be able to permanently threaten milling your opponent should they keep their hand too full. Currently, opponents do not have to worry at all about milling outside of a spam of curses when they have none in their hand. Um, I think if your opponent is willing to keep their hand full to play around you, you should be able to still punish them one way or another, even if it's a burn here or there. With how decks are nowadays, that one burn could be burning their Kazakusan, or it could be burning their hero card, or their Mutinous, or some uh, influential minion is getting destroyed, or card is being destroyed. Um, I think that one change would reinvigorate the deck a lot. Um, to my side here, you can see the list I'm currently running. The one change I would make is as soon as I get Ashara, I would probably swap out this Treasure Guard for Ashara. But until that time, I do like having the Treasure Guard here for a bit more defense and the draw. Um, but just to kind of prove my point, I'd like to bring up some HS replay stats. Um, so from here, you can kind of see a generic, uh, a generic list and stats for Curse Lock. Um, and honestly, it has a very good spread in matchups, and it defeats a lot of the kind of more popular decks out there. I mean, you can see this deck as a whole does very well into most board-centric strategies, including like Mage, so this would include mainly Mech Mage and also Naga Mage. It does well into Demon Hunter, which apparently, if you don't know, is the number one deck on ladder. Does well into Paladin, both control and mech. Um, and I mean, basically any aggro strategy, this is a control deck. It does reasonably well. It has a lot of heal in the deck. So it does actually do quite well into aggro. Its main issue right now is its abysmal win rate into two of the most common decks, other common decks on the ladder, that being Control and Pirate Warrior, and also Quest Hunter. Um, Quest Hunter, I'm okay just saying is a write-off. That's not necessarily a problem with this deck. It's just a problem with how Quest Hunter is built as a whole. But its issue into Control Warrior, one stems from their ability to increase their life total, but also I think it stems from the ability that Quest Warrior can do a lot of things that this deck can do. Just, I mean, not necessarily better. I think it might have stronger control. You could argue it has better control options. I think it has better value options, which is one of the things that really makes control decks struggle. It has the Kazakusan for some insane kind of late game swings, and it also has plays with Nelly and Bran where they can randomly get 6 pirates and OTK you in a single turn, all from cards that didn't start in their deck. If we switch over to a generic control warrior list, as you can see, I mean, it's a lot of the same spread, but Control Warrior as a whole struggles much more into some of the other control matchups, um, which I think is one of the things to really see that the Curse Lock shines through. I like Curse Lock being kind of like a control counter, and I think that might be where it kind of sits. It's not going to be the best anti. It might not be the best anti-aggro tool, but I like having its niche where it can really pump out that damage. And if the opponent is letting the game go long enough, being able to really kind of close it out. Um, Honestly, as a player, I'd like to see as many decks be viable as possible. It's just more fun for us all. And when the Hearthstone team goes out and does unique things like they do with with Curse Lock, uh, like I'd like to experiment with these cards, and I think I like to see these decks succeed because it ultimately leads to us seeing more decks like it in the future. But anyways, that's my 2 cents. Take it from me or take it or not. These were my issues and how I would fix Curse Lock. Thank you all for watching. Take care. Take it easy. mccarko out.